Hello and welcome to the WWE Host Smackdown show. Don't bury the lead. We are here every Friday night to review and recap SmackDown right after the show. My name is John Zindel. I'm joined by my co-host here, Dom Scarcella. Dom, what did you think tonight? And what is your reaction to the main event?
An interesting show coming out of a pay-per-view with another pay-per-view just a couple of weeks away or so. So this is crunch time here, just the way the schedule works out for the WWE. Some interesting stuff to happen, and the lead I think was right at the very end, even though it was not a technically a wrestling match there. I mean, let's get right into that. There, it was the Bloodlines, and what do you think coming out of that? There, let's say our top story. There was a lot of great matches, but our top story seems to be what they're building with the Bloodline. At least that's what I say. I don't know what you say. We don't bury the lead here, so I'll play off what you think. Don't bury
Yeah,
the lead, John. What is our top story here in an interesting post pay-per-view show?
you know, I'll go ahead and say that it's very unique for what we were used to because we've only been watching now. Well, now we're starting to get the weeks up. Maybe there's
Month and a
6
half.
weeks. Yeah, a month and a half. And they usually have a cohesive show where they build to the main event, and the main event is a match. And it's been Gunter, and he's been killing it. But this show was sort of building to the main event would be Roman Reigns talking. And that was the main event is Roman Reigns and the rest of the bloodline shooting a promo, which was good. Just a little unique in the fact that it is a promo. And this promo is at least pushing something in the right direction, which is, as you mentioned, we have Survivor Series coming up. And I was like, what the hell is this? And then you're like, oh, Survivor Series is coming up. I'm like, okay, so they're kind of building the team that will face the bloodline at Survivor Series. I thought it went pretty well. And I think anytime Paul Heyman goes out and has a microphone in his hand, he does great things. So I am like pretty happy with his performance. I would typically and normally have to say I prefer to have just like a match and
Mhm.
like that would be it. But they kind of rammed in a nothing match and a promo. So yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything you wanted to add outside of what I just said?
I'm gonna try and encapsulate what the lead really is here, and I'm gonna have to draw on a number of things that happened throughout the show.
Mm-hmm.
The lead here is the cohesion of the bloodline, and I'm gonna lay out why I think that is the lead here. Number one, we had been coming off weeks and weeks where they were playing up the tension within the bloodline, dissension in the ranks, not always getting along. Sami Zayn being sort of the court jester, bringing some comedy to it, but also being a flashpoint for some of the tension there. Um, and what makes me think that they're trying to build two Survivor Series and a big match is that, in order to do that, you've got to show that teams are united. So
Right.
tonight's show was all about rebranding the bloodline as a united front. You had the match of the night was the tag team match that started the show. The Usos beat the New Day. Great match, great tag team match. Lots of double teams, lots of double team moves, lots of double team sequences. Clearly, two tag teams that have chemistry within the teams and cross teams, with each other as opponents in the ring. Great match. The Usos win. It looks like now the Usos are set up to break the New Day's record for longest title reign with the tag team belts. After weeks and weeks of there being tension and Roman trying to play down the Usos, especially Jay. This week, Roman acknowledges them in the ring, about how great it is. And they even did that backstage, talking about how great it was that the Usos have now supplanted, or, in 2 days, they're going to supplant the New Day
Yeah.
as the longest running um, tag team title reign. This is, and no Sami Zayn. They didn't want to put it in anybody's mind that, this could be a comedy spot. This could be the tension within the ranks. They didn't do that at all. So for whatever reason that Sammy isn't here tonight, the effect was, this is a united bloodline. This is not about the tension. This is not about dissension in the ranks. This is not about awkwardness. This is not about comedy. As enjoyable as that is on the show, I mean, it's been gold.
Yeah.
This was about presenting a united bloodline, formidable bloodline, and about building on some past shows to get them very quickly into a program with another formidable faction.
They're already like, it was already a no-brainer that they'd be the team in for Survivor Series. So it's a good call for them to sort of put something together where, all right, who are the guys? Who's the people that are going to have to face them at Survivor Series? So I think that the segment went pretty well. This is the second time we've seen a promo, and this one was a lot less confusing than the Bray Wyatt one, which is like, yeah, here's the top team in the bloodline that's going to be the Survivor Series, and here are 4 people of Irish descent that are going to face them. I believe that's what their connection is.
The connection seems to be, yes, it's Brawling Brutes and Sheamus and then Drew McIntyre. So they're bringing in the British Isles. Not all the same aisle, but
That's true.
There's more than one out there. So why not just mash them all together and say it's all the British Isles? Mm-hmm. So okay, but it's all people that have heat with the bloodline for various reasons. Some of it very recent, and then at the end, Drew McIntyre comes out, and apparently, they're playing up something that happened just before I think you and I started watching and doing this. That Drew McIntyre apparently has heat with Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns over either costing him a title shot or a match or something. So it's the bloodline versus people who have some very obvious heat with the bloodline. And, if you've got to hustle and move very quickly into a program, I think they accomplished that tonight. And they use the occasion of the Usos about to set their record with the tag belts as something that feeds into that. So this is
definitely,
and although it wasn't a wrestling match, technically, we did go off the air tonight with, guys slugging it out.
Yeah.
There was some in-ring action. It did matter. And I do like that it gives us a chance to mention that opening segment and that opening tag match as part of sort of the lead story here, because it was a great match. This is 2 weeks in a row where the opening segment has been the match of the night.
Yeah.
What do you think of that opening match? It was long. We were more than half an hour into the show by the time that match got over with all of the post-match cheering and getting the guys out of the ring. It was 8:32 Eastern time. Show goes on the air at 8 Eastern time. By the time all that was done, they had 2 commercial breaks in there. They let the guys go. They let them wrestle. It was almost a pay-per-view quality match, I thought. I mean, what did you think about it? Were there some spots in there that some sequences in there that resonated with you as somebody who's been a wrestler, or just as somebody who's been a fan? I mean, what did you think of it?
One thing I would have to say is I almost messaged you because we don't watch the whole show together. We kind of meet up maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes before the show. And I almost messaged you and said, well, this should have been the main. I was like, this should have just been, I wish they had this at the end and we could talk in great detail about this match. But nonetheless, they opened the show and with it. And, it took the crowd a little bit to get into it. And they were working slow, which is awesome, which I was like, yes, and they went for about 30 minutes. I mean, I checked the clock, and it was really about like 30 minutes. They really went. These two have faced each other a zillion times, so they just were kind of they have great chemistry and have always had really good matches. So you're not going to be disappointed. I did notice, like specifically with the spots, I really like. WWE loves hot tags. Like that's their thing. They work the hot tag a lot, and the hot tag works. Stick with it, right? I like hot tags too. So there was a time where it almost looked pretty obvious that Kofi was going to be, or excuse me, Xavier Woods would be tagged in for the hot tag. And one of the Usos ran around and pulled him away from the mat.
Yeah.
And a big pop from the crowd because it was like, okay, they're working the hot tag. And it was like a false hot tag. It was pretty good, well done, false hot tag. So I kind of noticed that was a pretty good spot that they had done. And I appreciate the fact that although they are super, or at least at one point, where they do like an athletic style of wrestling, the New Day, they kind of slowed things down. They were doing the stomps in the corner and tagging it in and doing the like stomp, 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 tag, stomp, 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 tag. Like the New Day did it at one point, which is like big man stuff, but they were doing that. I thought
I have a question for you on that. You mentioned the pacing. I noticed that as well. In the beginning of the match, it was a slow burn to get started there. Did that, since you know these teams better than I do and have seen them more, was that unusual for either of those teams, both of those teams? Is it something that you expect with two teams that they're building have met each other so many times and would know each other? I mean, because it was noticeably slow to me. It picked up as the match went on, and it wound up being, I think, a great match. It started off as a okay match. By the end of it, it was like, wow, that was a great match. But you knowing more about these teams than I do, unusual start for me. Was it throwing you for a loop?
Well, I liked it, and it was slowed down. I would have to say unusual that they would let anybody go 30 minutes, specifically in a tag match, specifically on any WWE programming. A lot of it was unusual, but a happy unusual. I was like, cool. Give me long matches between people that are good and not like hit row. Like we could cut one of them segments out and just make that match longer. So I think that's why they were working so slow in the beginning, because they knew they had to go 30 minutes. They don't want to gas.
Sure.
It'd be funny to see a bunch of light athletic guys gassed, but and doing like rest holds. But I don't mind them kind of, or actually I should say I kind of like that slow style and like, hey, this is the opener, this is wrestling. Like kind of teaching the crowd, like, okay, we're going to slow it down here. So the crowd doesn't have to go ape shit for every spot. It's like, we're going to go 30 minutes. So that was definitely the best match. And I would say kind of wish that was in the main, just from our style of stuff that we like. Cause I was like, this is going to be the best match of the night.
But it's memorable. So, I mean, they had to have that match to set up what happened at the end, and they could have done almost a throwaway match, but they didn't. They put the New Day and the Usos out there for. I mean, the match probably ran 25 minutes when you get rid of the intros, but I mean, it was 3 segments of TV.
Yeah, and I was like,
they gave them time. They didn't cheat them, and if that means that, like you're saying, like, oh no, that's one fewer squash match from the beginning of the 9 o'clock hour. That's just a throwaway. I'd rather them extend guys who really are getting the crowd into it and who are making for some great television. I mean, tell me about some of the double teaming and the real tag team stuff and sort of the tag team chemistry that we definitely saw as this match went on. Are there elements that you've seen these teams do a million times before? Was there some new stuff? If it's stuff you've seen before, did they put a fresh twist on it where it worked for you? I mean, I've got something to say about, at least going up to the finish, but I don't have context for it.
Well,
Can you fill us in?
I can fill you in to a certain extent.
Go
So
for it.
full transparency, I have not watched WWE in about 3 years. So I'm basing it off of memories of those two teams.
That's more than what I got.
Interestingly enough, New Day at one point were heels. And
Okay.
people would say instead of New Day rocks, New Day sucks.
Oh,
I
the
really
chants
like
from the crowd.
the New Day sucks. Now they say New Day rocks. And then the Usos were like Islander baby faces. Like think about The Rock kind of when he first
Okay.
came in with the bright colors and they were like Islanders. So that's like how far back I'm going. And I noticed that triple team with the stomp. I definitely stole that from them years ago. That's pretty easy, and I love that one. Like stomp, stomp, tag, circle out, stomp, stomp, tag, circle out.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So I love that double team. And then some of the high spots toward the end. I haven't seen them do those. I saw Jay or Jimmy, because I mixed them up. I don't know which one was which that took this, but they did they kind of put Jimmy or Jay over one of their knees, and he took such a crazy bump on his head, and I could see him go like, oh. So I did notice
They did it to each of them. Yeah, and they did Jay on the outside. And then as Jimmy came to in the ring, he was the legal man. They did that same double team. It's kind of a somewhat of a backbreaker onto the knee, and then they hold the guy. The other guy comes off the ropes with a stomp.
I've never seen that.
Okay, well you saw it twice.
Saw it twice. The second time looked nasty.
Yeah,
but a good nasty because this is the opener and it's a 30-minute match. So throw one of those in there. Throw a stiff spot in there. But
how about the finish? Same thing. Finish. Let me set it up here. I've got the notes. Both Usos have Kofi up on the top. It looks like they're setting up a double superplex off the top turnbuckle. Kofi fights out of it. Double noggin knocker. Both of the Usos fall off, and it looks like Kofi then is going for a flying crossbody onto Jay. But instead, the Usos throw that into what I think they call the 1D, which is sort of that bulldog maneuver. It's a combination, Randy Orton calls it the RKO, Diamond Dallas Page called it the Diamond Cutter.
Yeah.
Team 3D, the Dudleys used to do that as a double team move, and they would call it the 3D. The Usos, since we the ones, apparently they call it the 1D because it was a move that was familiar enough to me, although I haven't seen the Usos do it, but a neat sequence for me there, and they wind up getting the pinfall there.
And look at the transitions too, like with the pacing.
Yeah.
Like they're doing the side headlock stuff in the beginning and like real slow side headlock and the holds and they're doing that stuff in the beginning. And then when they get you 25, 30 minutes in, they're going nuts and they're doing all the high spots. So they did everything in the right order, let's just say. At least
the match built as it went on. Like it built up to something.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, you had the right winner. For some reason, I did have a little doubt in my mind. I don't know why. I was like, are they going to pop the tag titles over to the New Day? But then I didn't realize, the Usos have had the titles forever. They're going to lose it. It's probably WrestleMania, it feels like. Maybe. I bet either they'll have Roman and the Usos drop it at WrestleMania. All of the titles. They're going to be like a mega title team, and then they'll have none. That would be my guess.
Well, but, before we get to the title reigns, I want to mention one other thing from that tag match, and you tell me if you noticed this as well. We typically don't like guys who are written to be tweeners because that almost means that you're not giving them a personality and not giving them a chance to connect in the simplest, most basic way possible with the crowd. But maybe it's because these two teams have been around for so long. I couldn't tell who was babyface and who was heel in this match. It
This
looked
is
like the crowd just was happy to see both of those teams wrestle, happy that they got the bonus of a very long match between all these great competitors. And by the end of the match, I still didn't know who was supposed to be heel, who was supposed to be face. There was no cliched movements, no cliched either antagonizing the crowd or trying to draw them in. You couldn't say that one team was working heel and one team was working face. Really,
yeah.
I thought it was just a great match, and not every team can do that. But
I
what did you think of that?
Yeah, we usually and we both agree. We don't like the gray booking stuff when you have a baby face, or when you have like some tweener versus some heel, or tweener versus face. Just tweener's usually not that good. But I feel like in this specific situation, the Usos are going to be over, and they're kind of like the badass heel, and the New Day aren't crazy over as baby faces, and they flip back and forth. So it's just like, okay, we know these guys
Oh,
can go.
okay.
You know, I think it might be more of, they maybe, I would say it might be more of the things where they have worked this stuff. I mean, they have both kind of flipped back and forth in the past, and the Usos are over. They're going to be a tough team to just outright boo, and they're not doing like straight heel wrestling. Like, but if you're going to be champs for 450 days, maybe you got to change it up and be kind of, aggressive and attack. They weren't doing anything too dirty that the New Day wasn't doing.
No, it looked like to me to be standard modern tag team wrestling.
There was
And
one. Wait, there's one thing.
okay.
So where the New Day line up and where the Usos lined up, that's where the baby faces always are at, and this is where the heels are always at. Like, that's where they place the teams in the tag to let you know.
Relative to the hard camera, you saying
Yeah,
like the New
the,
Day
the
was in the
baby
baby
faces
face?
are always in the hard cam shot, and you could see them.
You see their faces. Ah, okay. So
And
that's
the,
a neat signal.
and the heels, you always see the back of them.
Sure.
Um, but I
Because
could
the hot
see,
tags go into the baby faces. You want that on the hard camera.
and yes, exactly. And then you also have, so I think the Usos, because I was noticing them a little bit toward the back, toward the corner in the back. They were chirping at the crowd, which is like perfect. Like, hey, who's the babyface? Who's the heel? They're yelling cuss words at the crowd. I was like, okay, we know they're the heel. We know they're in that corner, but they weren't necessarily leaning too hard into the babyface heel thing. So I guess after a series, I guess as I'm kind of like thinking out loud here, there are some signals that it was a babyface and a heel thing, but it wasn't too in your face.
No, and the way the match ended, there was no. I mean, I thought it was a great way post match to have all four guys just kind of spent in the middle of the ring. You know,
Yes.
Xavier came in to check on Kofi, and he's glaring at the Usos. The Usos are got their belts, but they're just kind of leaning against the bottom rope, sitting there like they're kind of jawing at each other, but they're not going to brawl. And then the Usos kind of just slid out of the ring with their belts.
Yes.
And so there was like a lot of mutual respect there at the end, as there should be. And I think this leads me into, don't bury the lead, and if anybody's, watching us either live or on a recording, tell us if you thought in the comments, if you thought there was some overt heel and babyface stuff going on, because it wasn't totally evident to me. I mean, John, you explained some stuff that I didn't know about, but if anybody else has other clues that you maybe have, drop those to us, because I want to learn about this stuff, and I want to bring that into our league. We've decided our lead is the bloodline showing a united front going into the next pay-per-view. Do you think there's going to be a heel face dynamic between the Bloodline and what seems to be Sheamus, the Brawling Brutes, and Drew McIntyre? Or is this still up in the air as to who's the heel, who's the face? Or are they going to just do another? We don't know who's heel and face. We're just going to put guys in the ring and hope that the match is good enough that we can get by without that. I mean,
I think that they'll have the Usos or the Bloodline rather be heel, and that they'll have the other Irish guys, and I'm just going to call them the Irish guys because it's whatever the
the
four
Scotch Irish guys, yes.
yes, the four people from Europe with the accent that speak English, but the accents are different than mine.
Yes.
Um,
The funny English speaking people.
yeah, yes, they got them weird accents. Okay. Yeah, so these guys, I think they'll probably have them be face, and it'll be like the underdog baby face thing where none of them have any titles.
Mm-hmm.
The Bloodline have a zillion titles, so you're gonna pull for them because we're like, wow, it'd be cool if they actually win. So they'll have that kind of going for them. It'd be more interesting if you're there in the live crowd if you see Sheamus, McIntyre, the other two guys
The
go
Brawling Brutes.
Brawling Brutes rather than the Bloodline. Especially
You mentioned underdog. I that is another thing. The four funny talking English guys, they all kind of have a score to settle because the Bloodline have been bullies in all of those programs. They were the bullies against the Brawling Brutes, who were outnumbered. They clearly were the bullies against Sheamus. I mean, the angle is that they broke his elbow, gave him a hairline fracture in his elbow. He was wearing the extra bandage on that left arm even tonight, even though it's been a few weeks. Apparently, they screwed Drew McIntyre out of something. So the Bloodline have been the heels in past programs, or at least have done the common heel tactics in past
right.
programs. So yeah, between the Brawling Brutes, Sheamus, and Drew McIntyre, those guys are underdogs. They don't have the belts, and they have sort of a babyface score to settle because they've been screwed over.
Yeah, they might go over as the underdogs for sure. And there's like they actually have some history, which they pointed out right away. All this history I'm not sure about, but Michael Cole filled us in as they were coming out, which
Mm-hmm.
I kind of appreciated. So there seems to be some sort of heat they had from before, and that should carry us into the pay-per-view. So we did the main, we did the opener. Any other matches stick out to you, or anything happen in between there?
Oh yeah, I think we saw some great stuff that wasn't the lead, obviously, but this was a pretty decent show. Wrestling wise, I like the World Cup tourney for a shot at the Intercontinental title.
Yeah,
Um, I think it's a good tie-in with the Soccer World Cup that's happening now. It's an interesting thing, and in a way, it shows off the international flavor of the WWE's roster that they
yeah.
can put together something like this.
And
Um,
I was, we were kind of chatting about this before the show in the studio. You and I were talking
in the green
uh,
room.
in the green, yeah, in the green room. You and I were going on and chatting about it. But one thing I figured was like it's pretty cool to bring up where their origins and their nationalities are from in a tournament. I think it works a lot better than just like, hey, really lean into your nationality or origin. Like that's kind of like it I don't know. It's kind of played out and dumb and doesn't go. I
Mhm.
don't know. I'm just not a huge fan of it. But if you put them in a World Cup and you have these people from different regions and they play and they wrestle each other, then it's a great idea and it makes sense. And you said it was sort of something that the old NWA, WCW, and they had done in the past was like these different worldwide people would compete in these tournaments.
Sure, yeah, promotions that would play up their arrangements with other countries used to do that a lot. TNA Impact used to do it recently. They used to have um, especially in their X division, which was kind of their cruiserweight division. You've got there was always Canadian wrestlers. There are always Mexican wrestlers. There are always Japanese wrestlers, and then you could always have Team USA. So there's always a big when you think of long-standing great pro wrestling outside of the U.S. Canada, you always think of them in big history there. Mexico and Japan. So you've always got four that you can use.
Yeah,
WWE is going 8 here.
yeah,
And the fact that they don't have to put teams and factions together makes it easier to do that. And it's not like it doesn't look like they're reaching just to play up the international gimmick. I think these are guys even we just being back to this for a month and a half. These are guys we've seen on TV. They legit belong on a SmackDown program. They just happen to be from all over the world. And yeah, I mean, once in a while, play it up. And especially because it's a tournament for an IC title, for the Intercontinental title shot. It's
yeah.
makes sense.
I
I'll
like
go with
it.
it. I'll see where they're going.
I like it, and I like what you just mentioned there. That like the big four countries are the U.S., Mexico with the lucha libre style for sure, Canada, all the great wrestlers from Canada, whether it's any of the Hearts or a variety of people from
Great
Canada.
legacy.
Yeah, and then Japan, of course, they have their own pro wrestling. They don't even associate with WWE that has big shows, right? So Japan, of course, is another one.
We saw Japan and Mexico today. It was Shinsuke Nakamura and Santos Escobar. The numbers game played into it. Santos Escobar got the pin with his Phantom Driver off the second rope. That's a fireman carry move, and then in the air, he turns the wrestler and kind of tucks his head. So it's almost like a small package power bomb. But it's supposed to be kind of like a sit down pile driver,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah,
with the
yeah.
guy in a
I know what
different
you're talking about.
position. It's they give it a name, and he calls it the Phantom Driver. But Shinsuke Nakamura, great reputation coming out of Japan, the king of strong style. Santos Escobar lineage. Apparently, we're talking about his family lineage, his father being involved in it, and that's part of the Legado del Fantasma name. So this is two. This is Japan, Mexico, and two lineages here in that match. I thought for good match, nothing to complain about. I mean, it wasn't gangbusters, but it's a good match. It's worthy of being on TV.
It
We
was
saw
better
another
than a
one of those,
squash
which
or a
was
squash.
brunch.
It was
Go
better
ahead.
than
I don't want to move too fast on you. Go ahead.
no, it was better than a squash we would normally see.
Absolutely.
It was a regular match, and it had Shinsuke, who years ago was a pretty big star in the WWE, but it's kind of he's in the tail end of his career. He's 42.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I did want to point out about this match, and
Sure.
I can't believe they actually did it. On New Year's Day, there's some Japanese promotion, and Shinsuke Nakamura is facing somebody. I think it's Muda.
The Great Muda.
Yeah.
I did hear that mentioned from the announce desk.
And they mentioned Michael Cole's like, yeah, on New Year's Day he'll be facing the Great Muda, and it's not associated with the WWE. It's a Japanese promotion, and I was like, whoa! You can really tell there's a big difference when Vince would dare even promote another company. So I think that's cool. I think that's like a really positive step.
That is cool, and I want to follow up on that. I didn't want to cut you off there, but the Great Muda, for them to mention it's the Great Muda's farewell tour. Great Muda is, I don't think, very well known in typical WWE circles. He was huge in the NWA days when the NWA would go to Japan and bring wrestlers over. I mean, Great Muda was involved in Starcades for years. There are tremendous matches with Great Muda and Ric Flair, Great Muda and Sting. So I remember him from the old NWA and WCW arrangements with the Japanese promotions.
Yeah.
Tell us again, another opportunity here. Tell us in the comments if you're a longtime WWE partisan. I know that's a bad word, but like a longtime WWE watcher and fan. Do you know much about the Great Muda? Do you know much about Japan's strong style?
Or do
That'd
you
be
know
interesting
nothing?
because, like, that'd be interesting. If somebody does, let me know. I remember him, but because I'm not a WWE, blue blood for the last 25 years. I've watched lots of wrestling from lots of promotions, and I'm actually newest to the WWE. So I get it. But let us know. I mean, do you remember the Great Muta? Do you remember any Great Muta WWE angles?
Yeah. And let me tell you something. Uh, so we went right from the Great Muta to a squash match with Braun Strowman and Jinder Mahal, who I haven't seen in a while. So you knew, like, okay, this is going to be a squash between a giant guy and another like huge dude, Jinder Mahal, but it's still a squash. What is Braun Strowman? Is he the U.S.?
He's probably got to be U.S. I didn't hear which Middle Eastern country. I'm guessing Jinder Mahal is from just based on the
From
name.
India.
Jinder Mahal, fairly big guy, did not look towered over by Braun Strowman in there. So I didn't know that about Jinder Mahal. He's a pretty big guy.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yes, for sure. A big guy, and one of those things where we like the tournament, and I like the tournament because it's simple enough. We're gonna know who's gonna face who. You can have baby faces versus baby faces, and it makes sense. Heels versus heels. You don't have to set too much stuff up. You can give me and Dom, the guys that are just kind of watching for wrestling, just a good match to win this tournament, and it can actually mean something because it's a shot at our boy. He's my boy. I don't know if he's your boy too, Dom.
Gunter, I like him. Gunter's
Yeah,
good, and he was on this program as well. He's lending a little of his star power to this World Cup tournament. So we got to see Santos Escobar defeat Shinsuke Nakamura. We got to see Braun Strowman in a shorter match, but I mean it wasn't bad. It was a decent TV match. Beat Jinder Mahal with the power bomb, and then backstage, Ricochet, who he's an endearing guy for me because he works hard and he's not afraid to put people over, and he still looks formidable. He's involved in this World Cup. He was back doing an interview, and they had Imperium, all three of them, come in and interrupt that interview. That kind of gives Ricochet a rub. That Gunter and the rest of Imperium would bother interrupting his interview.
yeah.
Like that's a rub for Ricochet. So, now we've also seen that, Ricochet's involved, and not as just a guy who's necessarily automatically going to be squashed. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Ricochet wins. I don't know who he'll be up against. There's four more wrestlers we didn't see in action tonight. It's Ricochet, Sami Zayn. I don't remember who the other two were. They just showed them on sort of a graphic montage. I didn't get everyone's name though. But
Yeah.
I mean, they're playing up this tournament. They're trying to give it appropriate TV time. I like that. This was just round one, half of round one, but I like where it's going.
And then, I'm going to just go ahead and say the tournament's a good idea. And it's probably a good idea to probably make this tournament to give Ricochet a much deserved win somewhere in this tournament, right?
It'd be good, yeah.
Because they've got some guys that could probably job out that are older. Like I haven't seen Shinsuke Nakamura in forever. I haven't seen Jinder Mahal. Like there's got to be somebody that can job out to Ricochet because he's been doing a good job.
Well, those guys already jobbed, so I don't know if it's a round robin tournament or if it's a standard, first round winners move on, losers are out. So we'll have to see that in coming weeks how it plays out.
Yeah,
But
I can imagine it's single elimination for the sake of simplicity. But so I do want to talk about other things that happened during the show. We have
women's matches, some
yeah,
women's matches and women's angles.
so the six pack challenge.
I've never seen a six-pack challenge match before. That's their fatal four-way, but with two extra people in it.
So fatal six-way.
Sure.
Uh, we have Shotzi, who is somebody we've seen a lot of, honestly, the last 6 weeks as we've been watching. So Shotzi wins the six-pack challenge.
Yeah.
Kind of cool that she wins because every time I'm like, yeah, she's doing a lot of simple stuff right. She comes out in a little tank. She looks very distinctive because she has green hair. She's had solid matches. Like, I'm not saying, like you said,
Tag matches, though. This
yeah.
was interesting. She's a tag wrestler, at least from what I know from watching. And this is a singles push for her.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. She can work in the ring, so maybe it's well deserved. We'll see. But that's an interesting wrinkle.
And Dom, this is a positive podcast. We try to be. We're not going to just bring people down and trash them and talk how bad the product is.
We don't bury the lead, and we try not to bury the wrestlers either. It's entertainment. We're trying to be entertained.
If for some reason we do not bury the wrestlers, and it might be part of the title subconsciously seeped into my head where it says "Don't bury," where I don't want to bury anybody. But there was a pretty ridiculously bad botch during the match. So someone who I've never seen before reaches under the ring and she goes to pull out a table and she really fumbles around with it for a while. And
Raquel Rodriguez, Shotzi's tag team partner.
Okay, Raquel Rodriguez, who, if Vince McMahon is in the building or on a Skype call, I can only imagine he is screaming at her when she comes back because she pulls the table out. It takes like forever. She sets the table up. Then she goes to put somebody into like a pile driver. I think that was
Sonya Deville.
Sonya Deville. She goes to put her into a pile driver. So even as I explained the spot, you could just imagine it's taking forever.
They're on the ring steps, which have been pushed over to the announce table. So Sonya Deville is between the knees there. It could be a pedigree onto, the tables behind them. They're on the ring steps next to the thing. It could be whatever, power bomb if she's going to spin. But Raquel Rodriguez is going for some sort of large pickup move onto Sonya Deville. They're using the ring steps for leverage. The table's behind them. And then what happens, John?
And then Liv Morgan does some sort of kind of lariat, and she connects with the lariat and hits the girl, Rodriguez, and she goes back, kind of nudges the table and hits a little bit, doesn't go through the table. Everybody's just like laying there. They all just kind of fall to the ground, and then they're just laying there. The table doesn't break. And the crowd just sits there in silence for about 5-10 seconds. You're like, oh, that was the spot. And then the crowd just starts chanting, table, table, table.
Yeah, right. Again, the second table chant we got in the six-pack match.
Because people realize that the table is still not broken and it
was too far away.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be something off of where those ring steps were. That table needed to be closer because, it probably would have been a botch if they tried to go through the table with Raquel Rodriguez's move. She would have had to jump back. It looked like a good 4 or 5 feet.
There was no
They
shot.
would have missed even worse if that lariat spot wasn't thrown into the mix there.
Seeing how Raquel Rodriguez positioned Sonya Deville and how she put everything together, if she had tried to pile driver, she might have broken this girl's neck. Like I was so nervous when she was like climbing around and she was slow, and I was like, "What is she doing?" And maybe, they missed the spot. I kind of would have preferred somebody to kind of get up, no sell, and then just slam somebody through the table, and then get the table broken. Like, okay, we botched the spot. Who cares? Hit the table again and break it. Do something.
On the other hand, and the announce table brought this up. It looked like a nasty spill against the edge of the table. I think it was Wade Barrett who mentioned that that's the worst part of the table to hit. And it looked like Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez hit right on the edge of the table. And so they were playing up that it was nasty looking.
So in the spirit of two botches tonight, so that one was pretty bad, and they just kind of like didn't react, and the crowd started to chant "table, table." There was another botch that was a happy accident, and
Okay.
Sheamus came out to shoot a promo, and his mic kept cutting out. So he's trying to shoot the promo, and his mic's cutting out. Roman Reigns is in the ring, and he just immediately calls him out, and he's like, "You can't even say what you want to say on the mic." And then everyone's like, "Oh," and then like brings the house down with that one line. And it's like, so that was a
Pro
great
wrestlers can improvise.
That is like,
you know that from being in the ring. You've got to be able to go with the flow, right? I mean, not everything works perfectly. Not everything works the way you planned it, and you've got to be able to entertain in the moment, spontaneous.
So Chris Jericho likes to say he doesn't like the word botch because it just indicates like, oh yeah, like they screwed it up. So even though like Sheamus screwed it up, or I should say really the technical team screwed it up when Sheamus came out and couldn't say anything on the mic, they really played it off perfectly. And it was like, this is probably better than anything Sheamus would have said and then what Roman would have said. It's like, your mic doesn't work. Oh yeah, bang. They hit the ring, they start brawling, you're like, okay, cool. Versus, that table spot, they just kind of laid around. There was not great improvisation, not great improv there.
But it was an important spot in the match because the three of them, one way or the other, were supposed to be just incapacitated. Because, again, we've talked about how some matches are just a nightmare to have to book and to have to write. And a six-pack match has got to be a nightmare to book. So,
a six-pack match where you have six wrestlers and you have to figure out who's going to be outside of the ring, who's the 2 or 3 in at one time. Yeah,
Xia Li got beaten pretty badly, so she was out on one side of the ring. Sonya, Raquel, and Liv are in that table spot, which, botch or not, it was a nasty looking spot. They're incapacitated. That allows Lacey Evans and Shotzi to do the finish in the ring. And the camera got us back in time to the ring after, just showing the three of them on the outside by the announce table.
Yes.
They get us into the ring in time to see a pretty decent finish. Lacey goes for a kick to the midsection. Shotzi blocks it and quickly turns it into a DDT. Good finish, good move to finish it. I don't think I remember Shotzi doing anything like that in the tag matches. Interesting finish, and it looks like a push for someone who had been a tag team wrestler.
If I'm going to be honest with you,
not a bad match.
I was like, this match isn't so great, and then they had the botch, and then I was like down on it, and then Shotzi had the spot and won. I was like, cool. So, hey, even though the match wasn't this American classic, I was like, good winner. We like Shotzi. We're like, okay, Shotzi versus Ronda Rousey. Maybe Ronda gets a new dance partner and can improve a bit.
Ronda was on the program with Shayna Baszler. It's becoming kind of their thing now, is that Shayna starts talking to a wrestler and then they turn the attention towards Ronda, and then the other wrestler turns to Ronda and Shayna Baszler attacks from behind. They did that with Shotzi right in the very next segment after this match. So they're trying to build heat for Shotzi. They're trying to build Shayna as, this henchwoman for Ronda. They're trying to build Ronda as the really aloof heel. So, I like the character development, and we'll have to see in ring if Ronda can, be worthy of the title.
Yes. And, Dom, I think I'm going to just talk about B-Fab versus Selena at the end there, that throwaway match. What are you going to do, right?
It was throwaway on purpose, though, because when they started the match, the two of us are thinking, there's no way this can be a real match. I mean, there's not enough time left. They've got to get the bloodline out to the ring. There's no way this is more than 5 minutes. And then the intros were taking so long. I was like, there's no way they're having a match here. This could be just a Donnybrook. And sure enough, it was a surprise Donnybrook. I think I caught the name of this new faction, Valhalla. It's sort of a Viking Nordic reference, but it's two Viking looking guys and a Viking looking woman. And apparently this is to help the tag team division, and great, because when done well, tag team wrestling is fun. But yeah, this was not a match. It at no point did this look like it was going to be an actual match, and sure enough, it was not an actual match. But there was a lot of action. There was bodies flying everywhere, and it wound up being actually a pretty interesting setup. And sort of a kind of a cool down to then bring you up again for the Bloodline and Roman Reigns.
They almost had to be like, who it would be like the worst main event that we could throw out here. It was almost like, who is like two of the most bottom card people? They're like, how about the two, I don't want to call them managers. They're kind of like,
they're valets, but they also wrestle, but they also manage.
They're valets. Yeah, they're two. We got a double manager match in the main event. Like that.
Sure.
What if that went 20 minutes? I'd be like, oh my God. But yeah. So they had about 20. They had like 10 minutes to kill, so they came out and did that.
And John, before we go home here, because it's getting late, yeah, let me talk to you. This was not a match, but it was a backstage segment, LA Knight, and then Bray Wyatt comes out to kind of recruit him to join whatever Bray's putting together. And LA Knight, he's just not really having it yet. And so Bray kind of levels him and walks off. And then, LA Knight gets up and goes, where'd he go? Where'd he go? Like he wants to get back at him. But I thought that was an interesting rub.
Yeah.
Like Bray Wyatt and LA Knight, are they going to continue that? Or was that just, because on one hand, it shows me two things. Number one, it shows, well, maybe more than two things. It shows me that they want Bray Wyatt to start interacting with the roster, maybe to build a faction.
Yeah. And
so that's one, and that's big. So speak to that if that's.
It's that would be actually a pretty cool direction to head in, because he's always had factions of people that just kind of look like him, like big uglies. Yeah. So you had a guy like LA Knight who is nothing like Bray Wyatt in a faction. No. Then you're starting to talk about interesting factions, right? Like when you have 2 or 3 different people that look differently, but you're like, okay, maybe if they start to blend those two together. I mean, you like LA Knight. That's really your boy.
It's a good rub for LA Knight too. I mean, he's still kind of new. Yeah. They're still trying to figure out what to do with him. So just to have him on screen with Bray Wyatt.
Yes.
I'd like to see where that, even if this was the only time, it showed something that, Bray Wyatt's now going to be looking around to build a faction. And the first guy that he picked out, that he chose to go up to was LA Knight. Let me talk to you. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Kavorka thing. Yeah. He's telling the ring announcer that, he's got Kavorka eyes and crazy Seinfeld references. And
maybe that was it. Bray Wyatt couldn't resist the Kavorka.
The Kavorka. Yes. That might be it. Oh, man.
Oh, man. I don't know. Like they do a lot of writing around here. I don't know. Maybe it's the Kavorka bunch, but Bray Wyatt. It looks like they're setting a direction for Bray Wyatt. It's a good rub for LA Knight. At the same time, LA Knight was not rebuffed the invitation, and of course Bray has to level him. But it wasn't like what Shayna did to Shotzi, where put her in the sleeper, and now she's just lying there. LA Knight took the shot, went down, Bray disappeared, and LA Knight popped up going, where is he? Where is he? So he wasn't squashed. So I think a really interesting chance meeting there between a guy who's back and who they already are pushing to the moon in Bray Wyatt, and a guy who's, for WWE purposes, new to their programming, who now gets a rub. I'm in. I'm in to see where it goes for Bray. I'm in to see where it goes for LA Knight. That's a neat backstage thing to do.
Yeah, for sure.
I liked it. I mean, it's obviously not a major thing yet. I mean, it could be major. Two months from now, we may look back and say like, yeah, LA Knight and Bray Wyatt are tag teaming for something. We'll look back at that thing that started. But for whatever it turns into down the line, it was a neat little segment here.
Because you have no idea what they're going to do with Bray Wyatt.
No.
And there's a lot of bad thoughts that go in my head when I'm thinking about what they're doing with him. But this is probably the right direction to have somebody that's a little bit more like a traditional good pro wrestler that's known in the indies kind of go along with him. So you can get that heat that Bray Wyatt brings with all the intros and all the goofy promos. And then you have LA Knight who can talk and needs a little bit more attention. So yeah, pretty good from that standpoint. All right, Dom.
And they're both kind of heelish.
Yes.
They're both they're trying to give off heelish vibes for each of them, even though a lot of the crowd still cheers Bray.
Yeah. I mean, he's beating up people. He's beating up regular people standing in the back. That should probably get him over as a heel, hopefully. Maybe people like violence. I don't know. But yeah, so I don't really have anything else to talk about with this show.
Nope.
We always do the Italian goodbye here, not the Irish goodbye. So we start to say goodbye, but that really means that's like a 5-10 minute warning, right? We don't just bounce. We say
we can go lightning around here because it was an interesting and varied show, but we got to everything that was in it. I mean, is there a go home that you want to really drive home a point here?
We do have our first comments ever in the chat. So I do want to say, thanks for joining and giving some chat comments. But it is absolutely. From a bot. And it says, my hot photo here. And the name is Girls 18 Online. So I'll take any comments we get. These are 3 bot comments. But hey, somebody thought of us out here when they're watching. So this is our first chats we've ever received during the show. Thank you, Girls 18 Online.
I'm going to have to disagree with you. We don't bury the lead and we don't bury the wrestlers, but we can bury the bots. I mean, where's Elon Musk? Let's bury the bots. I mean, my go home is that this is a show that could have been disjointed because of the 2 pay-per-views so close together that they've got to come out of one and build to the next one. But I think overall the show worked for me. It started off gangbusters with that great tag team match, which was the high point in the ring. But I do like that it built to something later in the show, and it really looks like the lead coming out of Crown Jewel and coming out of the program that the Bloodline had been working leading into Crown Jewel is that now we have a united front for Roman Reigns, Jimmy and Jey Uso, Solo Sikoa, maybe Sami Zayn. We didn't see him tonight, but united front Bloodline very quickly going to what looks like the next pay-per-view. So, I mean, is it too little time to really build heat and an angle? We'll see, but they're going for it. They're trying. And, as usual, my go home is always, I'm going to give it a chance. I'll go for the ride with creative, with the writers, as long as, the wrestlers make it plausible and pull it off in the ring. I'm along for the ride. We're rushing to hit the next exit, but let's go for it.
Yeah. Well, Dom,
tell us what you think in the comments. Not bots,
Not.
real people.
Not.
Tell us what you think in the comments. I mean, do you think this is working? Are they moving too quickly? Is it something that makes sense to you if you've been watching longer than 6 weeks like me? Do you have a favorite here? Is it something you wanted to see? You wanted to see the Brawling Brutes and Sheamus get back in there with the Bloodline, because there's a lot of ways this could go. There's a lot of threads that they're trying to tie together. Educate me. Tell me in the comments. Tell us in the comments what you think about this show and the direction they seem to be going with the United Front Bloodline. Don't bury the lead. Don't bury your own opinion either. We want to hear it. I want to hear it. I'm still new to this, and I want to get educated.
Yeah, and speaking of direction, we are headed toward the exit here. The exit is coming up. We're hitting the blinker. I guess you're going right. I'm hitting left. Go right. We're headed home. Dom, thank you so much for joining. And thank you, Girls 18 Online. We have to delete these posts, but thank you for everyone that is watching, and we're kind of getting a couple more viewers, a couple more subscribers. So we really appreciate that. And Dom, again, thanks for joining, and have a nice rest
everyone.
of your Friday. And we'll be back next Friday. Thank you, everybody.